The 25th richest person in human history, according to CelebrityNetWorth.com, is Warren Edward Buffett. Buffett's peak net worth is valued at $64 billion. The way Buffett made a lot of his money is as an investor. He is the primary shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway. An interesting fact about Warren Buffett is that he plans to give almost all of his money to charity, rather than to his offspring. Another interesting fact is that Buffett does not believe in God. He is allegedly an agnostic. The 24th richest person in human history is Samuel Moore Walton. His peak net worth is valued at $65 billion. Samuel Walton is best known for his retailing empire known as Walmart. At the time of this writing, Walmart's retailing empire is so powerful, it is, at this time, the biggest private employer in the world with over 2 million employees. The 23rd richest person in human history, according to CelebrityNetWorth.com, is Marshall Field. He was the founder of Marshall Field & Company. At the time of his death, he had an inflation-adjusted net worth of $66 billion. An interesting fact about Marshall Field is that he died from a case of pneumonia that he attained while playing golf with, among other people, Abraham Lincoln's oldest son, Robert Todd. The 22nd richest person in human history is Steven Van Rensselaer III, who had a peak net worth estimated at $68 billion, adjusted for inflation. Most, if not all of his wealth seems to have come from the fact that he was heir to one of the largest estates in the New York area. He may have made a lot of money off of perpetual leases as well. An interesting fact about Rensselaer III is that he graduated from Harvard University at 18 years of age. CelebrityNetWorth.com has Carlos Slim Helú tied for the 22nd richest person of all time with Steven Van Rensselaer III. His highest peak net worth thus far is $68 billion. Carlos Slim Helú is chairman and CEO of Telmex, America Movil, and Grupo Carso. He has also been recognized as the wealthiest person in the world in 2007, 2010, 2011, and 2012. An interesting fact about Carlos Slim Helú is that some people think he is a robber baron type monopolist who charges exorbitant prices via his Telmex telecommunications company. The 21st richest person in human history is Jason Gould. He had a peak net worth of $71 billion. His massive wealth seems to have come mainly from railroad ownership and stock manipulations. An interesting fact about Jason Gould is that he is one of the most hated tycoons in American history. He seems to have been often called a robber baron. The 20th richest person in human history is Frederick Weyerhaeuser. He had a peak net worth estimated at $80 billion. His wealth came from the timber business and ownership of land. He was born in Niedersalheim, Rheinhessen. An interesting fact about Frederick Weyerhaeuser is that he was a Presbyterian. These are people who follow Calvinism. The 19th richest person in human history is Henry of Grosmont, 1st Duke of Lancaster. He had a peak net worth valued at $85 billion. Henry of Grosmont seems to have gotten that rich simply by inheritance, but I can't ascertain how exactly he or his father became that ridiculously wealthy to begin with. An interesting fact about Henry is that he likely died of bubonic plague, which was very rampant during that time period. The 18th richest person of all time is Alexander Turney Stewart. His massive wealth came from creating the largest department store ever at that time. At his death, he had a net worth equivalent to $90 billion. An interesting fact about Alexander Turney Stewart is that he was offered the position of Secretary of the Treasury by Ulysses Grant, but was rejected for it by the Senate. At number 17 is Stephen Girard, who was born in Bordeaux, France. He had a peak net worth of $105 billion. He made his historic fortune from shipping and banking. An interesting fact about Girard is that he didn't produce any heirs, so he left his massive fortune to charity and municipal institutions. At number 16 is John of Gaunt, 1st Duke of Lancaster. He had a peak net worth of $110 billion. His massive fortune was supposedly accrued by generous land grants. What that is supposed to mean exactly, I don't know. and how generous land grants turns into an incredible fortune of $110 billion when adjusted for inflation is somewhat hard to fathom. An interesting fact about John of Gaunt is that all monarchs of England and later of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, and the Commonwealth realms from Henry IV onwards are descended from him. The 15th richest person in human history is Richard FitzAlan, 10th Earl of Arundel. He appears to have accumulated his massive wealth by inheritance, land ownership, and perhaps military conquest. An interesting fact about Richard FitzAlan is that he fought at the Battle of Sluys, the Siege of Tournai, and the Battle of Crecy. At his death, he had an estimated net worth of $118 billion. At number 14 is John Jacob Astor, with an estimated peak net worth of $121 billion. He achieved his massive wealth via the fur trade and real estate. At number 13 is William de Warenne, 1st Earl of Surrey. He had a peak net worth estimated at $147.13 billion. His wealth seems to have come from the land that he owned, which he acquired for his military service at the Battle of Hastings. The 12th richest human of all time is William Henry Gates III, who had a peak net worth of $136 billion. This fortune was mainly acquired via his Microsoft holdings. During the heyday of his Microsoft career, William Henry Gates III could arguably be considered a modern-day robber baron along the lines of Jason Gould, but this has been largely ameliorated by his very generous philanthropic efforts. At number 11 is Alan Rufus, with a peak net worth of $178 billion, adjusted for inflation. Alan seems to have acquired his historic wealth by enjoying the spoils of William I's conquest. His wealth seems to have come mainly or completely from land ownership via 250,000 acres of land in England. The 10th richest human being of all time is Cornelius Vanderbilt, with a peak net worth of $185 billion. He made his fortune from the steamboat industry and railroads. An interesting fact about Cornelius Vanderbilt is that he is Anderson Cooper's great-great-great-grandfather. The 9th richest person in human history is Henry Ford, with an estimated inflation-adjusted peak net worth of $199 billion. Henry Ford was founder of the Ford Motor Company. An interesting fact about Henry Ford is that he was very racist and was said to be an admirer of Adolf Hitler, who is arguably the most evil person in human history. The 8th richest person in human history is Muammar Gaddafi, with an estimated peak net worth of $200 billion. Muammar Gaddafi's wealth was amassed from, among other things, Libya's oil fields. An interesting fact about Gaddafi is that he was the longest-serving Arab leader of a country since 1900. The 7th richest person in human history is William I, Norman King of England, with an estimated peak net worth of $229.5 billion. William I's historic wealth seems to have been amassed from the spoils he accrued from his military conquests. The 6th richest person of all time is Mir Osman Ali Khan, with a peak net worth of $230 billion. As far as I can tell, Ali Khan seems to have been that rich simply because he was ruler of Hyderabad and Berar. An interesting fact about Mir Osman Ali Khan is that he had an incredible 40 children. The 5th richest person in human history is Nikolai Alexandrovich Romanov, with a peak net worth of $300 billion. He is another person on the list who acquired his massive fortune by inheritance. An interesting fact about Nicholas II of Russia is that even though he largely helped to run the Romanov dynasty into the ground and involved Russia in a war that saw over 3 million Russians die, he was still made a saint by the Russian Orthodox Church. The 4th richest person in human history is Andrew Carnegie, with an estimated peak net worth of $310 billion. Carnegie earned his fortune in the steel industry and on the sale of his company to J.P. Morgan. The 3rd richest person in human history is John Davison Rockefeller, who had a peak net worth of $340 billion. Rockefeller is often regarded as the richest person in human history, but according to Celebrity Net Worth evaluation, he is at number 3. John Davison Rockefeller's immense wealth came from the Standard Oil Company. An interesting fact about Rockefeller is that he supposedly never drank alcohol or smoked tobacco a day in his life. At number 2, celebrity net worth has the Rothschild family, with a peak net worth valued at $350 billion. The Rothschilds are a European banking dynasty. An interesting fact about the Rothschilds is that they have an Ashkenazi Jewish heritage. And the richest human being who ever lived, according to CelebrityNetWorth.com, is Mansa Musa, also known as Musa I of Mali. They value his peak net worth at $400 billion. His wealth came from his country's production of salt and gold. His status as the number 1 of all times is questionable, because Wikipedia has John Davison Rockefeller's peak net worth in 2007 dollars at $663.4 billion, which would be more than Mansa Musa's net worth. But in Celebrity Net Worth's defense, that Rockefeller valuation comes from Forbes, not them. And of course, that was 2007, not 2012, so maybe the inflation adjustments by year changed and perhaps lowered Rockefeller's peak valuation below Mansa Musa.